Hello and welcome back to Suspended Phenomenon. I'm your host, Dennis Bithoulkas, and this is Project Blue Book, Season 2, Episode 3, Area 51. So we finally get to Area 51 here. Welcome, everybody. Let me take care of some business first, then we'll get to what's going on here. If you like what you see, like, share, and subscribe down below there. If you're still on the fence about joining up and subscribing, you're going to see at the very end of this video a video pop up here. Basically, what YouTube does, it takes the algorithms of all the stuff you've been watching and tries to match it as best as possible to one of the videos in my vast video library and pops it up there just for you. Up here is going to be Is It Worth My Time October Faction is what's going to be up there. Also, if you want to know when I'm going to be on live again next, you can hit the bell down below here as well. It's a 50-50 chance of YouTube actually notifying you. Best thing to do is go to suspendedfanimation.com, take a look at the schedule up there, and I change that out every Monday, so should be up to date. I'm usually within 15 to 30 minutes of whatever that time is. Most of the time I'm on time. It's for some other stuff I get caught in traffic or whatnot, and then I try and change out the time if I have access. I also mirror that same schedule up on my Facebook page. And speaking of Facebook, I have a Facebook group page which you guys can talk amongst yourselves, post some stuff, and basically have some fun there. I have a Twitter, I have an Instagram, I have a Patreon page, but no tier sub as of yet. So there we go. So let's get into this. Spoiler alert, I am going to spoil the shit out of the episode. If you have not seen the episode, go and watch it. Come on back. This will be a video. You can comment down below in the comment section. Thank you, Viking Bitch, for the paddle. So, for those of you who haven't seen any of my podcasts or vlogs or anything like that, what I do first for this thing is I'm going to do a short recap of the episode and then I'm going to do a review at the end here. So, bear with me on that. So we open up with a soldier running through the desert, and his name is Willingham, and he ends up getting picked up by a UFO and then dropped back down again. We see Jeeps pulling up to him, and he looks kind of dazed, and they ask him why he's been missing for 12 hours, kind of thing. Where has he been for the last 12 hours? So then we see Mimi and Alan. They're at the drive-in and they're watching a sci-fi movie, and of course, they're discussing as to what incident it's actually based off of, what they're watching on the screen. And Alan mentioned something and Mimi's like, was that actually real? Did that actually happen, kind of thing? And he says, yeah, there's, all these things are kind of based on things. And he's kind of laughing at the pseudoscience that they have in there. And then they start discussing, he says, I'm glad you actually are learning so much about what I'm doing. And she goes, well, I can't help it because I'm typing up your notes now. And then they start talking about the danger that he's in and investigating all this stuff. And, he goes, I know there's some risks involved, but it's for the better, for the betterment of things. So they return home to find Quinn and Valentine waiting for Hynek, of course. And so she takes off there and they tell him that there was an incident over in Groom Lake and they need to bring him over there. And Groom Lake is run by the CIA. And he's like, who? And it's like, oh, it's a new group that's just out now. And you'll find out more about them later. And basically, Valentine wants them to close out the file as quickly as possible, of course, even though someone's been abducted and still hasn't been returned. So there's another soldier that's out there that we haven't seen returned. And of course, Mimi's been listening to this off to the side, and she hears about Groom Lake and all of this stuff, and they take off. So Hynek and Quinn get dropped off out in the desert, pretty much in the middle of nowhere, by helicopter. Aaron like, where the hell are we? And Quinn's like, I have no idea. And this Jeep comes driving up, blaring some music, and this guy gets out and they said, yeah, we're supposed to meet someone by the name of Daniel Banks out here, is what Quinn says. And the guy says, I'm Daniel Banks, who happens to be an African American gentleman, and which, of course, the 1950s government, Quinn has his misgivings, shall we say. So, yeah, as he says, as they're driving back to Groom Lake, and Quinn kind of wonders how Banks joined the CIA. And Banks says, well, I couldn't necessarily look like you now, could I? Because that would just kind of tip everybody off that I was CIA. He goes, yeah, besides that, I'm really smart. And he actually had, he knew who Hynek was, he knew who Quinn was, because they've been reading these, Project Blue Book, files. He's been reading all of this. And yes, Tyler Durden, I agree with you. This is the most interesting episode yet, and we'll get to that in a second here. So they stop in the middle of nowhere and they're like, "Well, what are we doing?" And Banks says, "Well, I need to call in clearance first, otherwise we get shot." And so he calls in clearance on the walkie-talkie and gets brought in. So Hynek asks what goes on in Area 51, and Banks kind of gives him a nice little song and dance. And Quinn goes, "That's basically CIA speak for that. They can't tell you because it's all classified." So as they're going to go in and talk to Willingham, um, and basically they said, well, he was out there for 12 hours. Maybe he suffered some dehydration, started hallucinating. And Banks is like, no, doc checked him out. Everything was good on his fluids. He wasn't dehydrated at all. So they're going to go in and go and talk to him. And Banks grabs a bottle of booze and a glass and brings it in and gives a glass to Willingham, tells him, go ahead, you can drink that. And to tell the story to Hynek and Quinn. And so he tells them about how he and Miller were out in patrol out in the desert there, and Miller was goofing around as usual. And then, as they had gone off in different directions, Miller had gone over this ridge and started screaming. So Willingham jumped, ran over there just in time to see Miller being taken up into an aircraft that was hovering. And then he doesn't remember anything after that. And then, of course, 12 hours later, he gets dumped out in the desert. So, Hynek wants to take Willingham out into the site just to, jog his memory. And of course, Banks says, well, we need to get you some clearance first because we just can't go anywhere. And, Quinn even makes a joke, well, what about the bathroom? He goes, yeah, we got snipers there too, kind of thing. So Mimi ends up going to talk to Evan about Groom Lake, and he happens to know about Groom Lake. He's like, how do you know about Groom Lake? She goes, oh, it's just in some of the notes I've been typing up. And, or some of my readings is what she says. And he tells her about the government reverse engineering their own UFO out at Groom Lake. That's how he knows about it. So the guys end up going out into the desert, all four of them, to see if they can jog Willingham's memory. And he's out there and goes, no, this doesn't look familiar at all. And then all of a sudden he starts making a run for it and runs up over the ridge and starts yelling at them, it's down here, it's down here. And he starts digging in the dirt and they run over there. And Banks is like, we can't be here. This is not our area. All these different areas out here are owned by different branches of the military, and this isn't ours. We need to leave. And they dig and they see glass, a large surface area of glass, which is usually left by a blast site, that kind of thing. Um, so just as they are seeing this glass, their two Jeeps start pulling up, and Banks is like, we need to go now. We need to leave now. We're not supposed to be here. It's dangerous. And Quinn stands up like he's going to, of course, force the issue, but then ends up leaving too. Yeah, because of course he's Air Force. So he figures, I can do that. Yeah. So Harding ends up going to a confessional and he's telling the priest, what about life on other worlds? And he says, and you see him keep flashing back to like the alien autopsy things that he has seen. And the priest is like, I'm not following you. What's going on? And he goes, what about God? He goes, God supposedly created me in his image and all that. But why would he allow me to see these things if I wasn't created in his image and all this kind of stuff? And the priest is not getting this, of course, at this point. And then we cross back over to Quinn, pressing Banks to show them the craft that they're working on, what the hell they're working on at Groom Lake. And he goes, you know what? I can bend some rules. Sure. I can let you into the hangar. And so he shows them the aircraft they've been working on, like the flying wing. There's a vertical takeoff plane, all this kind of weird shit. Um, and he goes, well, what about the Soviets? Won't they see this kind of stuff? He goes, not on the radar. That this won't show up on their radar. And Quinn and Hynek both kind of express their concerns about maybe starting World War III with something like this. Valentine, in the meantime, is waiting for Harding out in the church when Harding gets out of the confessional. He goes, I just want to make sure that we didn't have a little lapse like what happened at Roswell. last time. And Harding's like, nope, I'm good. Everything's good. Uh, nothing like that's going to happen. So Hynek is asking Quinn, he goes, does the underside of the flying wing look a little familiar to you? And they flash back to when they had the UFOs flying overhead of them when they were out in the desert in season one. And Hynek actually proposes that this could be the explanation for all the UFO sightings they've been seeing lately as being all the CIA's experimental aircraft, that they could probably use that for Project Blue Book and for the public at large at this point. So we see this little thing as it's happening, and we're probably going to see it in future episodes as well. Valentine, in the meantime, wants to use Project Blue Book to get the Eisenhower administration, which has just been put into place, on board with their vision of, or Valentine's vision of what he wants done. And of course, Harding's like, sure, boss, sounds good. Um, Banks grabs Quinn and Hynek and, you know, says, you guys need to come with me. And he drives them out to the desert, and a tree out there has Miller, the missing soldier, basically impaled on it, like he's been dropped from above. And we see the autopsy of Corporal Miller there, and his eyes and tongue have been removed. Body parts have been removed too, like his stomach, his one of his lungs, that kind of thing. And the doctor's like, well, what in the hell could have caused all of this? Because all his arteries are cauterized where they've been cut. And this is when some guy comes in, he's an Air Force guy, and says, this body's now ours. You guys on Project Blue Book, get the hell out. CIA, get out. And they take Willingham with them as well. And Willingham screaming that, he didn't do it. He didn't do it. That they're going to pin the murder of Miller on him. Yeah. So Evan ends up showing Mimi a newspaper article of the Roswell ship had been sent to a base right next to them in Ohio, actually the base that her husband works out of and Quinn works out of, and that's where the UFO is. And Evan wants her to investigate, and she's like, that's not who I am. I don't know what you're thinking, but that's not who I am. And he goes, aren't you though? And she goes, well, what would I look for if I was looking for something like that? So she's going to decide to go and do this at this point. Um, Banks, in the meantime, says he's gotten word that the guys need to go back to Ohio. Everything's done now at this point, and they need to leave. And Hynek is pissed, and Banks is like, Banks is smart, and he goes, I'm the same as you guys. I'm looking for the truth at this point. And he goes, and I take it this has happened to you before, and is going to happen to you again. Because I'm sorry, but you guys need to leave. So Hynek and Quinn, basically Hynek grabs a Jeep, forces Quinn to come with him because Quinn jumps into the Jeep because it's now or never. And he's going to drive out to the site because he needs to find some evidence that's going to get Willingham off the murder charge at this point. So people are yelling at them as they drive off, and of course they drive over to the ridge and a little bit beyond, and it's nighttime at this point. And they see another truck out there and like, what the hell is that? You see these guys in hazmat suits that are picking up dead coyotes that have the same surgical incisions that Miller's body had. And they're like, okay, let's follow the truck. So they follow the truck to a gigantic cliff face, a gigantic mountain. And they're like, well, what the hell are they going to do? They've got to drive around it or something, right? And you see the whole mountainside open up, and inside is a hangar with a gigantic floating ball that has electricity floating off of it. And they're like, what the fuck is that? You know? And Heinrich's like, I've got a camera in my bag. Let me go get it. And he grabs it, and there's light just shooting out of this thing and all kinds of weird shit happening. And Quinn's like, we need to get the fuck out of here now. Quinn snaps a picture but drops the camera. And Quinn's like, leave it. We got to go. And so they take off, they're driving back, and Heinrich's like, I think I have an idea of how to get, Willingham off the murder charge. And, Quinn's like, no way in hell. We can't introduce any of this evidence because we have no pictures. We've got nothing. And they see two lights coming towards them, headlights, and they're like, oh shit. They've seen us. They turn around, they start driving away. And the two lights start speeding up on them, and then they split off, and we see them as two of those light balls, like the UFO light balls, and they start buzzing them and everything. And at one point, the two balls smash down in front of the Jeep as the Jeep loses power and stops. And they're like, "Well, what now?" And then all of a sudden, a gigantic light comes over the top of the Jeep, and the Jeep starts shaking with them inside of it. And then we see that it's a UFO above them. The light is turned off, and the Jeep is empty. And helicopters are coming buzzing over towards the UFO, and the UFO flies away and then takes off and is gone now at this point. Yeah, that's our what the fuck moment for this one, but it was just like they kind of ramped things up all of a sudden in this series, in this episode. And yeah, I was like, holy shit, that's a lot to take in right there. Um, so yeah, Mimi ends up at the airbase. She's in Alan's office, and their secretary, of course, like, okay, I'm gonna lock up for the day, and everything's good, and you should get going too, and then come back tomorrow. And Mimi's like, huh, I was looking outside and I see these hangars, like all of them have markings except for a couple in the back there. What's that about? And the secretary's like, I'm not at liberty to say. And Mimi's like, that's kind of weird, huh? That they don't have any markings. Don't you find that weird? And of course, she doesn't say anything. So Hynek ends up waking up next to Quinn there, and he kind of shakes Quinn awake. He goes, "Where the hell are we?" And Quinn's like, "We're in the back of a truck, it looks like." And he goes, "Do you know what happened?" Is what Quinn asks. And of course, they both have no memory, but it's 12 hours later. 12 hours have elapsed, and they've come back. They get back to the base, and Valentine's waiting for them, and he's just yelling at him, going, "What the fuck? When I tell you to get back here, I mean get back, to Ohio. Don't go off on a Jeep." And that's when Banks steps in and goes, "Sorry, sir." He goes, "I told them to go out and investigate a celestial anomaly. We've been requesting this for a while, and I thought since they were here, they could actually do this. So it's my fault." So he covers for them. And Valentine tells them that Willingham confessed to the murder of Miller, and they can go home. Everything's good. And he takes off. And they ask Banks, "Well, why did you do that for us?" He goes, "Because I'm the same as you." He goes, I want to find out what the truth is. And he says, you know, he told me that that bullshit line that Willingham had confessed to the murder just as he got off the plane. So it's all bullshit. And he says, everything beyond the ridge is Air Force territory. It's not us. I've never been out to that hangar that you guys had found, because they tell him about the hangar. And he goes, "If you're ever back this way and you need information, call me." He goes, "I will help you. I will, I'm the same as you guys. I want this truth to get out there." He goes, "I don't like cover ups." So that's where he's at this point. So we see Susie at the drive in, and she meets her new handler. And she informs them that she is now working Quinn, that she's got a higher asset than what she was working before, but now she's got Quinn. And she's told by her handler to kidnap Quinn. And she goes, "Kidnap an Air Force, someone in the Air Force?" And they're like, "Yeah, kidnap him and bring him in." And Valentine, in the meantime, tells Harding that they can't wait any longer on this, especially if there's a war coming, and he wants to fire the first shot. So they need to get moving on this UFO war that is coming. And they're looking at a file about that was given to the Pentagon about an upcoming extraterrestrial war, is what we got going on. So everything has kind of moved along fairly quickly. And that's how we leave off on the episode. So yeah, everything just got accelerated, like boom, we went to warp speed all of a sudden. And I was like, holy shit. This season just kind of took off all of a sudden. I guess I don't know if the Roswell incident, part 1 and 2, is supposed to be the season finale of last season or what, but it seems like it's a switch in tone. I don't know. Um, but good episode, damn good episode. We got some movement here. We've got a new ally now in Banks. We were getting a whole bunch of new allies now. We have Evan, which I'm thinking Evan now is actually working for some other agency. I don't think he's off on his own, as he's saying, and all that stuff. And I don't know. He might be another Russian plant, even, and working Mimi at this point. So who knows? Who knows where we're at? and but I'm digging Banks though, and we find and when the fuck did the Air Force get so much power? Where the CIA is actually frightened of them. Well, granted, the CIA is a new agency at this point in time, so they don't have the power that we know that they have now. Call Banks, so you can tell, so he can tell you what the truth is. Yeah, exactly. Tyler Durden says up until tonight, it's just been pulling the bait and switch with all the debunking. Uh, Sorry to interrupt. No, you're fine, Tyler. If you're still there. Um, yeah, I agreed with you, man. It is the most interesting episode that we've had yet. And hopefully they continue with this. Quite honestly, I like the direction that this episode took. Uh, I know there's a lot of people out there that have a problem with using real people from history and stuff like that, and putting them in these situations that may or may not be true. You know, taking some fictional liberties, I guess you could say, with them. I'm okay with it. It's, I look at this as embellishment. It's, you know, that's how I look at it. It's entertainment, really is what it is. So good episode. Um man, and Susie, man. Susie, I don't know if what she's gonna do since she now has to kidnap Quinn. Uh Harding is having his crisis of faith. I don't know what's gonna happen with him. Um yeah, and is Mimi gonna get caught at some point, or is she gonna tell Hynek that the Roswell UFO is actually out in the Ohio, hangar out there? And is he gonna tell Quinn so Quinn can go look at it? But will Quinn be able to go look at it before Susie kidnaps him? So tune in next week on another episode of Project Blue Book. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, man, some good stuff. All right. So what else do I got going on? I'm off tomorrow and Thursday. Friday is the excellent Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn episode 11. We're almost done with Harley Quinn this season, which is a shame. It's been a really fucking good season for it. And Saturday is Saturday morning blast off where I take the genre news of the week and any other genre stuff you guys want to talk about and talk about that. Sunday is Avenue 5 and might be the last episode of Avenue 5. We'll see. Monday is going to be Is It Worth My Time? And I don't know what I'm going to do as of yet. I'll find out by Friday. And of course, Tuesday is going to be Project Blue Book. Tyler Durden says this season is far more interesting than season one, but the constant mystery is coming full circle as our government being behind it all is becoming too predictable. Yeah, I'm sure they'll shake it up a little bit, Tyler. I'm fairly sure they needed to set the tone in season one. I realized that, and it was actually good. They did a good job of it. I liked it. Um, Season two looks like now we're getting into the nitty gritty of all the stuff that we've heard about, in the news and what's been leaked out there. And now they're kind of investigating that, but doing it in a dramatic way, of course. So I'm actually having fun with this. They're doing a good job, and it's entertaining, and it has a lot of what the fuck moments too, which is good too. It's one of those things that I look forward to every week, quite honestly. So with that said, I think I might end up calling it here. Where am I at? I can go for a couple more minutes. And anybody not digging this or what's going on there? I know there's a few of you out there. I got 6 people watching from what it looks like. So, I hear you breathing out there. And so far, I've only got a couple people responding. You don't need to lurk. You can type and interact and stuff like that. I actually prefer you guys interact, to tell you the truth. I like talking to you people. Yeah, it does fill that old X-Files void. It's very, very it's an updated X-Files. It still has that X-Files feeling, but updated, which is really good. but also retro in a way too, because of course you got the 1950s feel to it. This is the stuff that Chris Carter couldn't put a finger on when he was trying to redo the X Files for the 21st century, and he just had a problem with it. So, yeah, I hate to say it, but that last season of X Files, like I've said before, it's just dog shit. It was just horribly bad, horribly, horribly bad. I wanted it to be good, but it just wasn't. Yeah, unfortunately. So, well, so I'm gonna let you guys go for the evening. Remember to like, share, and subscribe down there. If you're still on the fence about joining up at the very end here, you're going to see a video pop up here. Basically, YouTube taking the algorithms of all the stuff you've been watching and trying to match it as best as possible. One video, my vast video library, I'm popping up there for you. Up here will be "Is It Worth My Time?" October faction is going to be up there. I have a Twitter or Instagram. I have a Patreon page. No tiers set up as of yet, but there will be. You can also go to suspendedfanimation.com and take a look at all of this stuff as well as the schedule. That's up there too. So thank you everybody who joined me tonight in the chat and interacted and all that stuff. I love, talking to people and new people as well. So come on board. And thank you if you made it this far in the video. And I will talk to you on Friday for Harley Quinn. Until then, don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. Otherwise, you may get abducted by a UFO along with a friend of yours and then get framed for that friend's murder just because the government doesn't want anybody to find out that UFOs are real. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your night, and I'll see you on Friday.